In all the figures in Celtic's rich history, there are perhaps none quite as iconic as the legendary Jock Stein. Stein managed the Hoots for 13 years, and in his time at Celtic Park won a colossal amount of trophies, and even took the Glasgow side to the pinnacle of European football. This is the story of Jock Stein, Celtic's greatest ever manager. Jock Stein was born in Lanarkshire, Scotland on the 5th of October 1922. In his teenage years, he worked in a carpet factory and down the mines, and the young Stein saw the game of football as his only escape. Stein agreed to sign for Burnbark Athletic in 1940, but following objections from his father, he decided to join Blantyre Victoria. Stein later signed for Albion Rovers, partaking in wartime matches as a centre-half, whilst working in the mines in the week. Following the war, Stein helped Albion Rovers win the second division title and seal promotion to the top flight. Following an immediate relegation, however, Stein left to join Welsh side Llanelli Town, where he became a full-time professional. A year later, Celtic purchased him for £1,200. It was the start of a beautiful friendship. 1 year after joining, he was appointed club captain. He captained the side to victory in the one-off Coronation Cup in 1953, before lifting further honours as Celtic won the League and Scottish Cup double. Stein would be forced into retirement after a series of severe ankle injuries. Upon retirement, he stated that he could not say Celtic was his first love like other Celts, but they would be his last love. And indeed, the love affair would continue. Stein was appointed manager of Celtic reserves in 1957, with the likes of Billy McNeill, Bobby Murdoch and John Clark playing under him, all three of whom would do so again later when Stein managed the senior side. Stein guided Celtic reserves to the Reserve Cup title, and in 1960 he accepted his first senior manager role. Dunfermline appointed Jock Stein as manager in March 1960. The side were only 2 points clear of bottom when Jock Stein took charge, but then won their first 6 games under his reign. Stein continued turning the club's fortunes around, bringing in the likes of Willie Cunningham and Tommy MacDonald. In 1961, Stein would come back to haunt his beloved Celtic, as his Dunfermline side defeated them 2-0 in the Scottish Cup final to lift the trophy for the first ever time. The next season, he took them to the quarter-finals of the Cup Winners' Cup. In March 1964, Stein was appointed manager of Hibernian, looking to turn their fortunes around as well. A 2-0 victory over Real Madrid in a friendly seemed to be a sign of things to come. However, an offer from Celtic would come up the next year, and despite initial reservations about Stein being a Protestant, he announced he would join Celtic at the end of the 64-65 season. Eventually though, Stein decided to get to work early, arranging for Bill Shankly's brother Bob Shankly to take his place at Easter Road. Jock Stein was officially appointed as Celtic manager in March 1965, and it was the start of a golden era for the club. At the time, Celtic were a shadow of their former selves. They were struggling in the league and had gone 8 years without a major trophy. The club had struggled by allowing too many different people across the board control things, as well as the manager, and had stagnated by not allowing the manager full control. Stein accepted the job on the basis that he would be the sole man in charge. Stein made sure to be close to his players, mixing with them in training and allowing them to train with the ball, something that amazingly was rare at the time. He brought in specialised training for goalkeepers and encouraged players to express themselves, often telling defenders to burst forward and help the attack. Most of all, he was keen to serve as a father figure to his players. He showed them tough love, known for using what many now call the hairdryer treatment if a player stepped out of line, but was also well known for his quick wit and was described by many as a joy to be around. Stein's methods soon brought results. Celtic reached the Scottish Cup final, where Stein came up against a familiar face in Dunfermline. 2 goals from Robert Auld and 1 from Billy McNeill sealed a 3-2 victory for Celtic, as their 8-year trophy drought was ended, and Stein's era had the first of many trophies. The next season, Celtic won their first league title since 1954, as well as the Scottish League Cup after they defeated Rangers in the final. A domestic treble was within reach, but Rangers would get revenge by defeating Celtic in the Scottish Cup final. New signing Joe McBride netted 43 goals in all competitions. There was a strong confidence amongst the Celtic faithful going into the 66-67 season, and Stein was no exception to this. He said to his players that he felt they could win everything, and now that they win the European Cup, this was indeed a possibility. The season got off to a fine start, with Celtic winning the first Old game of the season 2-0, which started an unbeaten run that lasted until December. The trophies started coming in early on, with a 1-0 win over Rangers in the League Cup final in October '66 being a sign of things to come. Only a week later, they won the Glasgow Cup after they defeated Partick Thistle 4-0 in the final. Celtic's first ever European Cup tie saw them defeat FC Zurich 5-0 over 2 legs, before they defeated Nantes 6-2 on aggregate. The prospect of a quintuple was looking ever more likely, as Celtic breezed through the Scottish Cup, scoring 16 goals in their first 3 games. Clyde were then dispatched as they sealed their ticket to the final. Celtic recovered from a 1-0 defeat against Yugoslav side FK Vojvodina to win the second leg 2-0, before 3-1 aggregate win over Dukla Prague sealed their spot in the European Cup final. 2 goals from Willie Wallace sealed a 2-0 victory over Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup final, before the league title was wrapped up soon after, with Celtic only losing twice in the league all season and netting 111 goals. The final piece of the puzzle was the European Cup final in Lisbon. Celtic would face the mighty Inter Milan, known by many as Grande Inter. Under management of Helenio Herrera, the highest paid coach in the world, they had won 2 of the previous 3 European Cups. Herrera was renowned for his defensive Catenaccio system, which saw them often winning matches by slender margins as they would sit back and absorb pressure. They were strong favourites. Celtic, meanwhile, were well known for their attacking play. Stein was undeterred by Herrera's tactics, saying that Celtic would be the first team to bring the European Cup to Britain, and that they would attack Inter like they had never attacked before. Only a few minutes into the game, Inter Milan had a penalty. Sandro Mazzola dispatched it, and Inter were in front. They proceeded to sit back and park the bus, with the early lead being ideal for their typical game plan. It was the turn of Celtic to attack, but they had a huge wall to break through. Celtic kept banging on the door, creating chance after chance, but could not quite break through, and went in at half-time 1-0 down. Celtic continued attacking, and around the hour mark, they finally levelled. Jim Craig cut the ball back to Tommy Gemmell, who blasted it in from the edge of the box. Celtic had finally broken through, and searched for a winner. The game continued as it had done, with Celtic frantically pushing forward whilst Inter defended for their lives. But in the last 10 minutes, Celtic's dreams were realised. A shot from Bobby Murdoch was deflected in off Stevie Chalmers, and Celtic were in front. The Glaswegians held out and completed their fairy tale. Jock Stein had masterminded the perfect season. Celtic had won every single competition they had taken part in, becoming the first British side to win the European Cup, and they had done so with a squad full of players who had all been born within 30 miles of Celtic Park. Billy McNeill held the European Cup aloft as Celtic fans jumped with joy. After the game, Stein stated, "Winning was important, but it was the way that we won that filled me with satisfaction. We did it by playing football. Pure, beautiful, inventive football. There was not a negative thought in our heads." Bill Shankly told Stein after the match that he was now immortal. It was the peak for Stein's side, but it didn't mean the honours stopped there. They won the League and League Cup the next season, before winning another domestic treble in 1969. With Celtic continuing to sweep up the honours, they had a chance to get a second European Cup in 1970, facing Feyenoord in the final. Sadly for Stein though, it would be the Dutch side who came out on top, winning by 2-1. Stein would turn down the Manchester United job, and in 1974 he sealed Celtic's 9th title in a row. Stein also knew how to regenerate his side, with the Lisbon Lions being replaced by members of the reserve team known as the Quality Street Gang, such as Kenny Dalglish, George Connolly and Lou Macari. However, Stein started to fall victim to circumstances beyond his control. Many of his young players moved down south to England, simply because the English clubs were offering them money Celtic could not. Celtic surrendered their league dominance to Rangers in 1975, and that same year, Stein was severely injured in a car accident. He had to delegate managerial duties to his assistant, Sean Fallon, for the majority of the 75-76 season as he recovered. Although Celtic won the league again in 1977, things were not quite the same upon Stein's return, with them struggling in the 77-78 season as Rangers swept up a domestic treble. With his best years at Celtic Park behind him, Stein decided to call it a day. He designated his former captain Billy McNeill as his replacement. Jock Stein left Celtic, having led them to 6 League Cups, 10 Scottish League titles, 8 Scottish Cups, and a European Cup. A testimonial was held in August 1978 against Liverpool, after which Bob Paisley encouraged Stein to stay in the game. Stein was appointed Leeds manager later that month, aiming to take the club back to the success they had seen under Don Revie. The Leeds players were excited about the prospect of working with Stein, but their dreams were soon over before they even began. Ali MacLeod decided to hand in his resignation as Scotland manager, and a replacement was needed. Stein expressed interest in the job, and ended up resigning from his position at Leeds to take charge of his country. In a strange coincidence, he was at Leeds for just 44 days, just as Brian Clough had been a few years before. Stein had a brief spell as part-time Scotland manager in the mid-60s, but the role was now 100% his. Scotland failed to qualify for the 1980 Euros, but Stein led them to the 1982 World Cup in Spain, finishing top of their group and just losing once. They started the tournament well, with a 5-2 win over New Zealand. However, a 4-1 loss to Brazil put them in trouble, and a 2-2 draw with the Soviet Union meant that they went out of the World Cup at a group stage. Scotland's qualifying campaign for the 1986 World Cup looked promising, and their last game, away to Wales, saw them needing at least a draw to seal a playoff spot. It was a huge night for Scottish football, and it ended up being initially one of triumph, but then one of tragedy. Mark Hughes opened the scoring for Wales in Cardiff, before Davy Cooper netted with around 10 minutes to go. In the dying minutes of the match, the stress was clearly getting to Stein, who close to the end of the game, fell after standing up. Full time came, but as the Scottish faithful celebrated sealing their spot in the playoffs, Stein was seen being carried to the treatment room, having collapsed. Stein had been struggling with heart issues, and had been prescribed medication for them, but had not taken them in the build-up to the game so that he would not be distracted by side effects. As the players celebrated, assistant manager Alex Ferguson went round telling them that Stein had taken ill, and they soon made their way back to the dressing rooms. The medical team did everything they could, but sadly it was not enough. Jock Stein died in a treatment room from a pulmonary edema at the age of 62. The passing of Jock Stein had a strong effect, with Sir Alex Ferguson breaking down in tears on the way home over his passing. Stein was cremated in a private ceremony in Glasgow, with many figures from football present. Jock Stein remains one of the greatest managers in the game's history. No other manager has won 4 major trophies in a single season, and it is unlikely we will ever see another Scottish team crowned champions of Europe. Stein achieved remarkable feats with a group of local lads, establishing a form of domestic dominance that was incredible, even by Celtic standards. The fact that the great Alex Ferguson and so many others speak so highly of him shows just how big a figure in the game he was. In 2011, a bronze statue of Stein holding the European Cup was placed outside Celtic Park to immortalise the club's greatest ever manager. Upon the statue's unveiling, Celtic chairman John Reid stated, "Jock will undoubtedly be remembered as one of world football's greatest managers, a man of immense stature and someone who gave so much to Celtic, Scotland and the game of football in general."